You want me to say everything is my fault?
When was the last time I said something nice to you?
Yes, because I don't know.
You think I was mean to you? Think I didn't do enough? Well, I'm sorry.
Do you think you've been good to me?
You think I was mean to you? Think I didn't do enough? Well, I'm sorry.
We're always having to get narcissistic supply. Is that people who are very narcissistic in their personalities tend to have this idea that if I'm in relationship with you,
The story for years that
you
you were
should
the one to
simply
blame.
divine my
You were the one to blame.
and meet them.
Years that you were the one to blame.
I shouldn't have to ask. We have learned over the past 100 years that there are some people who can't find their anger, even though they look angry to other people, because they literally don't feel it. In fact, there's been some research done in Canada where they've used fMRIs on people who are so-called alexithymic, which is a fancy word for they don't know what they're feeling. They have no words for affect, is really what the Greek term means. And if you take fMRIs of their brain, they really aren't feeling what everybody else will say they're feeling. They'll be in a group and everybody will say, "You're angry." And they'll be acting what all the rest of us would think of as angry. And they literally don't know that that's what's going on. Something isn't hooking up in their brain. I think we'll learn a lot more about the neurology of this eventually. But that's very different from, I can find my anger if I just am honest with myself. Well, I can say a few things about treatment. There's always been controversy about how to work with people with narcissistic dynamics, and partly it's because of they can have such different presentations. They can be devaluing, or they can be idealizing, or there's some other ways that they sometimes relate. All of these are their ways of trying to have a relationship, but they differ in what they require. There are basically a couple of ways of framing it. One important theorist, Heinz Kohut, basically said we all have this, and if you have a good enough family, you can idealize a parent and then slowly realize that they're human, and that's a kind of natural trajectory. And where you run into narcissistic problems is if the parent isn't good enough to idealize in the first place, so you can't take in the sense of identification with a good enough person, or when they, later in the process, when they resist your seeing them as human, like in kindergarten when they come home and tell you that their teacher knows more about dinosaurs than you do, and you have to continue to be seen as the wonderful, perfect parent of the 3-year-old. If you can't take their de-idealization, then they'll get stuck. And that's a way of thinking of it as a normal developmental process that people get stuck in. And therapy involves just helping them along that, get back on that developmental path. And the other main approach to it construes it as more of a getting off the path at the very beginning, and using radically maladaptive ways of dealing with development, especially devaluation of anything you might envy. And if you frame people like that, you kind of have to slowly take apart their tendency to devalue and show them the needs and the shame and the envy underneath that. And how you work with patients depends on, whether you're going from one theory or the other, how you see the particular patient, because some patients are better candidates for one than the other, and also to some extent the therapist's own personality, because especially with this kind of difficulty, it's really important that the therapist be fully authentic. You have to integrate who you are with how you understand any particular patient. So you can't do really good psychotherapy by applying a formula to anybody.
Yay. It is true. No big details into it.
They need their enemy to feel hatred. And if their enemy died, they'd still feel hatred. Addicted to a negative emotion. It's what you said to me earlier about the guilt. Well, addicted to a negative emotion. It's what you said to me earlier about the guilt. Well, think about this. What do people do when they feel an emotion? What do? They rely on something outside of them to make that emotion go away. So whether it's the masturbation or the pornography or the gambling or the shopping or the sugar or the whatever, it's all because they're trying to make that feeling go away. And they're using something outside of them. So then there is some emotion that the person is regulating. That's why they're doing that.
We're born with this predisposition to being sensitive, paired then with this overly seeing the negative things in our life.
I actually wanted to hurt you. Couldn't bear to see such dumb, beautiful happiness in someone. It was cruel of me.
I am not sorry. If I know the world, I can prove it.
You can't. That is the real.
Perceive situations as more threatening or distressing. So it might be a matter of perception.
We are a thought species. Know it. Hope is smashable. Realism is not. Protect yourself with the truth.
I realise what you are now, Harry. Just a broken little boy who cannot bear the pain of the world.
I do not need you to tell me what to do. Just go away. Just go away. I do not need you to tell me what to do.
This is a 6-year-old boy, emotionally needy, having the skills of a 6-year-old.
There's moments where like my ego pipes up and I'm like, you're not going to tell me what to do. My dad told me what to do. You know, this teacher told me what to do. And this like bitterness comes out and this anger part of my BPD, every symptom just shoots up and the child in me comes out. And for me to get to the point where I had to manage my expectations, you know, realizing I can't control others, I can only control my own internal body. But that activated nervous system that I live with still, making amends with my nervous system, the child in me, I'm still doing that inner child work, right? That child, like, you're going to make me do something that I had to do so much. Are we responding to that person right now, or are we responding to how many versions of our past selves that we had to act to be like, right? And that's the difference, is that I'm not responding to the person in front of me sometimes. I'm responding to so many people who made me do so many different things. And this is why I'm moving my head like this, because you aren't going to tell me what to do anymore.
Our emotions are based on interpretations of events, not events themselves. And so if our interpretation is wrong, I'll experience an emotion that doesn't really match the situation, an emotion that is inappropriate or inconsistent with what's actually going on.
They have a hard time with that integration, with that holding that two things can be true at once. And so they sort of operate from whatever they're feeling in the moment. And that really colors how they see the past, how they understand your behavior, your relationship, and guides how they will then, you know, treat you.
And if you don't like it, that's too bad. That's what you've created. Yeah, it is true.
No good deed goes unpunished. They need their enemy to feel hatred, and if their enemy died, they'd still feel hatred.
Magazine that seeking help made him realize his natural tendency toward anger and how it used to drive him. He once shared with The Guardian in 2018 about channeling this emotion, describing it as a volcanic energy that could both fuel and destroy. Over time, he learned and to let go of judgments and arguments.
Where is my fucking money?
These loops ends up drawing from the other person the very reaction and the very behavior that they actually do not want. That's a real difficult one to swallow, because what it says is that we create the other, and not just that this is who they are.
You want me to say everything is my fault? You think I was mean to you?
I think I didn't do enough. Well, I'm sorry. God forbid. I should know myself and I leave the world. God forbid I should ask myself. I should ask myself those questions. I put Harry to my lighter. What the fuck?
Stop gaslighting me, Clay.
So, what all this might look like from the outside, especially for somebody who is not on the extreme end of borderline, as I discussed in this video, you might see a person who, tended to not really own their behavior, who easily got triggered, who in the moment would say and do whatever they felt, regardless of who it hurt, and maybe later have some remorse, but still not really be able to own that they were out of control. They will always bring it back to the fact that you did something wrong. And because they see these emotions as justified and permanent, everybody else has to change in response to them in order for everything to be okay.
You keep digging these holes, and I keep throwing you rope, and I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore.
You know myself and I leave the world. God forbid I should ask myself. I should ask myself those questions. I put Harry to my lighter. What the fuck?
Stop gaslighting me, Clay.
Most fascinating experiment in my office because it's usually one partner is bringing it up and they're really scared and they're like, I think that, this feels, and, they don't use emotional abuse in the beginning, but they'll name all these characteristics and I'll be like, okay, it sounds like that's emotional abuse. And almost right away, you have one partner, kind of being shocked in the moment and going like, wow, I didn't really think about that, but that makes a lot of sense, whatever. And then you have the other partner just vehemently defending themselves. And what's not never, but rarely important and happens in my office is the person that's being accused, quote unquote, of engaging in abusive behavior, drop down to the level of like, oh shit, I am so sorry. And that to me is also a tall tale of how much abuse is going on, whether you guys acknowledge it or not. Like that's how ingrained it is in the fabric of your home and your interactions and how you deal with conflict, is that it's not a, whoa, everyone stop, you feel this way. Yeah. Like I watch people, it's again the worst experiment, prioritize how they see themselves and defending their own view of self and ego over oh my gosh, my person feels this way, even if I don't agree that that's how I am, they feel that way, and they feel unsafe in our relationship. And sadly, when I'm watching the reverse go on, the defending, the nitpicking, give me an example of that over and over and over again, I'm like, yeah, I don't need any proof, we're solid.
Self-reflective. If somebody says we do this, we'll have a think about it. We will say, do I do this? Do I do that often? How could it be perceived that I do that? And we'll actually consider, is this mine? But a hijacker refuses to have the capacity to do that. They do not want anything negative or even remotely negative to come anywhere near them, so therefore they turn it on you.
Where you exercise your will over another human being, it is all about them. They don't see the other. They don't consider the world of the other.
Teaching people then a little bit about how to manage their emotional state and self-regulate, I think is a great gift for people, because when they begin to break an addiction to any emotion or the conditioning of any emotion, there's going to be cravings that go on just like any addict, and many people overdose and many people have bad trips, and so when they start changing and the body's craving those familiar emotions, the body starts signaling the brain, of memories or to think certain ways and to make certain choices, do certain things, crave certain experiences just to feel that same emotion. And people say, well, this feels right. No, that feels familiar. That really feels familiar. And many people will tell the story of why they feel that way based on some past experience. And it's usually not in the recent past. It's usually many years ago. Like a toxic relationship or whatever that is. And so they're basically saying I had an event in my life, and since that event, I'm still living by the same emotion and I haven't been able to change. And they'll tell the story of that past. And in psychology, the latest research on memory shows that 50% of that story isn't even the truth. They're making it up because they don't have the same brain as they had then. And so then people are reliving a miserable life they never even had just to excuse themselves from changing. And they embellish the stories so that it sounds really hard to change.
For our thoughts can be untouched by a hard reality, whereas our bodies and souls must bump against the world, and the world will even up the equation over who we are.
You may unfortunately be right.
Where are we?
We are where we are.
Who just yells all the time? Who just threatens, gives ultimatums? Who throws wrenches in the gears all the time and disrupts anything, everything for what reason I do not know. So unfortunately, obvious things broke down and we are where we are.
For those of you who may be hurting others, take responsibility for your words. I need you to talk to these people, and I need you to think about, how can I change? Be open to the response they give you. Make sure that you can set a plan, and you need to make sure that you understand that this is not about perfection. We are imperfect people, so what it is about is practice and progress on a daily basis.
Why do you stay with him?
I always think it will be better.
Of course you do.
God forbid I should ask myself those questions. Like, what happened to my life? Did I deserve more? Did I ever for 1 second get as much as I gave? God forbid I should ask myself those questions. Ask those questions. Because if I looked inside myself, what happened? And I really saw what I shut out for my whole life, what I really missed. And I really saw what I shut out for my whole life, what I really missed. It would blow this building apart, and it would blow you into a million little pieces, and it would blow queens off the face of God's damn mat.
And if you don't like it, let's do that. There we go.
You might see a person who, tended to not really own their behavior, who easily got triggered, who in the moment would say and do whatever they felt, regardless of who it hurt, and maybe later have some remorse, but still not really be able to own that they were out of control. They will always bring it back to the fact that you did something wrong. And because they see these emotions as justified and permanent, everybody else has to change in response to them in order for everything to be okay.
What the fuck?